G'day ladies and gents, and welcome to MagzTV's vlog. Just coming in live for the first time. This is probably the first time most of you have seen my face. Apologies for looking so tired, it has been a very busy couple of days. We'd just like to introduce you to my latest wingman. Pop your head up here, buddy. This is Jackson, who was born just 2 days ago and has finally come home. And he is having a very, very, very big sleep. I'm not going to record too much where he's floating around because, hey, he needs to have his sleep. So, on with the show. So, that made the introduction a little bit different. Now I'm not entirely sure where to start. Well, I guess for those of you who have been wondering exactly what I look like and haven't bothered to chase down the photo that was posted on Facebook about 6 months ago, now you know. Although, you know what I look like after about 1 hour, maybe 2 hours sleep in the last 3 days, give or take. Although I have to say, my wife is rather impressive. She's had even less sleep than I have and has managed to look almost completely normal. No bags under the eyes, no signs of being tired, besides the fact that she's a little bit quiet, so she's a bloody machine, I swear. So, amazingly enough, I actually don't have a huge amount of gaming news to talk about in this vlog, because at least the games that I would normally play on the channel, I actually haven't been playing a lot of over the last week. Some recent events that have been going on the official forums have actually sort of turned me off playing War Thunder for a little bit. I'm not quitting before anyone gets that panic on, because I know every time I say I get annoyed, that pops up in the in my comment section. Not quitting, just a little disappointed with some of the responses that have been going on in regards to the bomber abusers comments in the simulation battle forums, specifically from the moderators. Yeah, just for once I would like to see a moderator not make an ass of himself on the official forums. That would be really nice. Actually, you know what would be even better? To actually see a developer respond to one of these questions. I don't want to know what the moderators think. The moderators are bloody call center operators. They are the bottom of the barrel when it comes to Gaijin's hierarchy. I want to see somebody a little bit higher up respond for a change. You know, I don't give two shits about Scarpa or Pacifica's opinion on how bomber balance or SB balance is working. I really don't. I want to see somebody whose job it is to actually balance simulation battle respond to the questions on the balance of simulation battle. I don't think that's a huge thing to ask. And it's all the community is asking for. Somebody who actually has the power to make a change, to actually answer a few questions on where this is all going. You know, theoretically, simulation should be my most played game mode, but there is a reason why I play RB more, and I take my simulation elsewhere. So anyways, what I have been up to over the last week is actually playing a lot of ARK. As a result of my wife going into labour, I've been basically taking care of my older son completely on my own, and while he does like playing the planes every now and again, he always loves the dinosaurs. And, you know, survival games are actually a guilty pleasure of mine. There are a lot of bad ones out there. ARK is not one of them. One of the biggest complaints about ARK is based around the grind, and I've discovered already that most of the grind in ARK is simply people doing it wrong. For example, out the front you saw I have a Triceratops. Triceratops are a great solo player's dinosaur, which is how I am. I am part of a tribe on this particular server. This is the AVA server. It's based out of Canberra. It's an Australian server. Now, I am part of the main tribe on this island, AVA. However, I tend not to do tribal group type activities very often. I'm very much a lone player. So I'm building this fortress on the opposite side of the island to where they are, all on my own. This is my place. I'm the only one who lives here. It's all mine. Now, that Triceratops out the front is a great utility dinosaur for a solo player, and it only took me about half an hour, maybe 40 minutes tops to train it. It can haul about half a ton's worth of goods easily, which is more than I need to actually construct a base of this size and scale, all on my own, out of stone. Using the Triceratops, it takes about 5 minutes to gather enough goods to feed myself and my dinosaur for... Yeah, I did just take a dump on the roof, by the way. Don't ask. It takes too long to explain, but yes, that happens. Anyways, yeah, it takes about 5 minutes to gather enough berries and basic supplies to feed my dinosaur and myself for an entire play session. So You know, it's a great dinosaur, doesn't take too long to use, and it completely shuts down the amount of grind that you have as a single player. But what you find is a lot of players that complain about the grind go out and try and get things like, say, a Tyrannosaurus. Now, you'll have to pardon me here, I actually have to kill the sound on this particular clip because I've got people talking in the background. This is a quick glimpse of the inside of the AVA clan, or the AVA tribe's base on this particular server. And as you can see, they've got multiple Tyrannosaurs, as well as things like the Spinosaurus, and they've got hundreds of dinosaurs trained. Tyrannosaurs in ARK are siege engines. They're designed for tribal warfare. They're meant to take out walls and massive sections of the enemy base. They're used like assault tanks. Now that does mean that they can take hours to train, but at the same time, they're not designed for usage by one person. In fact, as a solo player, you'll have almost no usage for something like a Tyrannosaurus, other than, to say you have one. They're designed to be trained by groups of people to use as weapons against other groups of people. The smaller dinosaurs that are designed for single player generally are very, very, very quick to train. Things like these saber-tooths take bugger all time. Flyers can take a little bit longer, but their utility is the ability to cross the entire island on their own. And this is one of the things that makes ARK so interesting, and it's one of the reasons why, as a survival game, it's gotten very popular very quickly, but unlike other survival games, it hasn't seemed to have died out. What most people perceive as being a massive grind is actually the signs that this game has an end game. There is something to do besides survive, and that's where most survival games fall in a heap. It's where previous dinosaur survival games have all collapsed. You go out there, you might train a dinosaur, you gain the supplies you need in order to be able to survive, and that's it. There's nothing else to do. In this, there is the equivalent of dungeons in terms of the caves that you have to raid for particular materials. Get enough materials, and you can summon endgame bosses, of which there are only 2 at the moment. I believe there's a 3rd one coming in, and eventually they're going to put it in so if you defeat all 3 of those bosses, you can then summon an ultimate creature, which the guess is, based on the trailer for this game, that it's going to be a giant dragon. Now, this on its own is completely different from most survival games. As I said, most of them don't have any endgame or any plans for an endgame at all. ARK also has full-blown tribal warfare, where you can take all of these dinosaurs you see right here and ride your entire tribe towards the enemy tribe and have a massive, epic dinosaur-on-dinosaur, player-on-player battle. Now, everything you see in this AVA base has been completely constructed by the players. None of this was actually here. If you were to jump onto a single-player server, or create your own single-player server on ARK and go to the point this base is actually built, there's nothing here. It's just an empty valley. This was all constructed by AVA using the materials within the game, and it can all be destroyed by players within the game. Now, of course, being an early access game, there are definitely some downsides to it. It has got quite a large number of bugs that are still being ironed out. There are some massive terrain glitches towards the centre of the island. The flying can be buggy. I've actually run into a few issues with that. The graphics optimization is horrendously bad. Everything you've seen so far, if you missed the message at the start of this little set of clips, is on absolute minimum graphics. That's because my computer cannot stand to run at anything higher. My machine can run most games on high, but the optimization of this particular game in comparison to the level of graphics I'm getting is pretty piss poor. Although, having said that, I have seen the shots of what it looks like on Ultra. If you have one of those dual SLI Titan monstrosity rigs that cost more than most people's cars, and it does look incredible if you own one of those systems. If you don't own one of those systems so you can brute force the game, you're shit out of luck in the graphics department until they get around to optimizing it. But I don't really blame them for not optimizing the game yet. It's usually something you do towards the end when most of your content is in and complete. At this point, the developers of ARK are releasing a patch about 1 every day to 2 days, adding new dinosaurs, animals, features, fixing bugs, changing parts of the terrain. It's quite possible that I'll go offline and stop playing the game for 2 days, come back and have 3, sometimes I've had 4 patches to actually install, because multiple things have changed through. And they're also running tournaments and playing with new game modes at the moment. Some of the modding community has already opened up for it. I believe there is already a map where somebody's created, I think it's Isla Sorna, out of the Jurassic Park story, has been created. I think that's the name of the original island. I can never quite remember. Anyways, doesn't matter. They've created Jurassic Park, the island itself, for you to play on at the same scale as the ARK island, which is kind of fantastic. So, I've been talking about dinosaurs for the last 10 minutes. How about something else? How about Rocket League? And what an awesome little gem of a game this is. I actually haven't been able to play anywhere near as much of it as I would like to at the moment, but every second I've spent on it has been amazingly good fun. The premise is so simple. Play soccer with rocket-propelled cars. And it's awesome. Yes, in Australia it's soccer, football is AFL. American football is gridiron, and rugby is rugby, which is, well, it's basically American football, but we don't wear a SWAT team's worth of armour. We go in a shorts and a singlet. If any of my American viewers are actually a little curious on what that looks like, take a look at the All Blacks. These guys are just friggin' huge. So, what is there to say about Rocket League? Well, there's actually not a huge amount that I need to talk about. What you see is exactly what you get. There's nothing sneaky or hidden that you need to work out with this game. You've got a goal at either end of the field, you're inside a giant caged arena. Yes, if you get the car moving fast enough, you can drive up the walls and across the roof. Your cars have a jump button for whatever reason that allows you to do jump maneuvers and kicks. The controls are great. It recommends you use a controller. I'm using keyboard and mouse. I really haven't had any of an issue. It works well, and that's because the camera control is so good in this game. It makes it very easy to track where you are and what's going on around you. The beauty of this game really is its simplicity. You try and get the ball in the hole using a rocket-propelled car that can jump. That's it. That's as complicated as it gets. And that's what makes it amazing. I have to say, this Kron guy was an absolute legend. I backed up here to try and defend the goals, and he just came in, smashed it straight off the wall towards the enemy goal, and then just takes it all the way up the end. Nobody could stop him. This was actually my first online win, and I did absolutely nothing for the entire match, but I don't feel bad because nobody on our team did anything except Kron. He just walked over the entire enemy team. Mags, where's the War Thunder? Yeah, alright. British tanks have been announced, and I would be a hell of a lot more excited about this if the ultra-low graphics problems, and as well as many of the other Ground Forces problems, didn't still exist. I'm actually a great fan of British tanks. It's the one that I've sort of been waiting for the longest, but here we are, coming up on the second anniversary of Ground Forces release, and all the problems we had in the closed alpha and beta sections of Ground Forces are still here. Nothing's been fixed. One of the interesting things I find about the ultra-low graphics problems is Gaijin is actually kind of trying to address it. You would have noticed recently there's been a massive focus on urban-styled maps. Urban-styled maps lack the foliage that can normally be removed in ultra-low graphics, so, you know, it bypasses the problem. Here's the funny thing, though. The buildings consume the same amount of resources as the trees do, but they can't be turned off. So, players that are using ultra-low graphics because they generally have...
Every time I just hears... and then something just pops up on the bottom right angle.
Yeah, Semper really enjoys it when I drive this thing. This is a Yag Tiger in Sim, by the way. So as I was saying, players that are genuinely using ultra-low graphics because their machines aren't powerful enough, when they get onto these maps, they hate it because their computer lags and it runs like crap because it's got to render all the stuff that it normally doesn't have to worry about when it's playing on ultra-low graphics because, you know, they don't have to worry about rendering trees. Players who are dropping their graphics down to ultra-low when they could be running higher are largely unaffected. So if you're going to create maps that are going to screw over the players that are actually running ultra-low graphics for genuine reasons, why don't you just enforce the trees for gameplay standards and just make Ground Forces increase the system requirements for Ground Forces, because by creating maps like this, you're indirectly increasing the minimum system requirements for Ground Forces anyway. But anyways, rant over, onto British tanks, and so far we've had 3 separate British tanks displayed for us so far. We started off with the medium cruiser tank A34 Comet. And I have to say, I did get a little giddy when I read that this was going to be one of the first tanks introduced. The Comet is actually one of the tanks that I've been waiting for the most. It's basically a British Hellcat, fully enclosed. Little beast of a tank. It was one of my favourite tanks in World of Tanks as well. I don't know how it's going to fit in with balance, but I'm just happy to see it there. I thought it would be a tank that would be introduced in the second release of British tanks, not the first front line. Next up, of course, was the Churchill Mark III, and this thing was definitely going to be in the front lines. This is probably the most famous British heavy tank ever created. I've actually always been a great fan of how the Churchill looked. I just thought it looked like a really angry machine, despite the fact that its entire design was obsolete before it rolled off the production line. It had to undergo massive amounts of modifications to bring it up to modern war standard. The Churchill was originally designed at a time when the British expected World War II to be much like World War I. The track design and layout was meant so the Churchill could safely cross trenches. Trenches, of course, being the main staple of World War I combat. They were not expecting the kind of war that would evolve into World War II. They were not expecting the kind of combat and tactics that would evolve in the Second World War. Of course, after some heavy modifications, it actually turned into a pretty good tank in the long run. Now, of course, the last tank announced was the medium tank Centurion Mark III, and this is a tank that I will openly admit I actually don't know a huge amount about. I know it was designed for World War II combat, but it never was produced fast enough to actually participate in World War II. I know it was used in the Korean War, and I know it was used in Vietnam, but I actually don't know of any famous battles that the Centurion was involved in. Sorry guys, but this one here is actually a genuine hole in my knowledge base. I know nothing about this tank. Well, that's not entirely true. I do know one thing from Australian history, and because we used to run the Centurions, and apparently they really had a knack for fighting on terrain that was generally considered the kind of terrain you wouldn't perform tank battles in. So it could be an interesting machine in War Thunder. As for the question that I've been asked over and over and over again since British tanks were announced, what British tank am I looking forward to the most? Well, the Comet was one of them, but outside of the Comet, the Conqueror. I really don't care how that tank is going to perform, it is just a sexy, sexy machine. Probably add the Tortoise to that list as well, that thing is kind of epic. So, what about War Thunder Air Forces? Well, actually at the moment there's not a huge amount of anything to report. Despite overwhelmingly positive votes, Scarpa crushed the proposed 0.7 battle rating spread test. His reasoning for the denial was that a test like this had been performed between 2.5 and 3 years ago, back before the battle rating system was in place, back when the system used to be 20 levels, and there were only half as many aircraft as there currently are in the game, and at the time it showed no noticeable change of result, which would be hardly surprising considering that there were half as many aircraft and only 5 less slots total in the system. Well, it's not like doubling your content without increasing your spread would in any way affect the results of a test that was performed 2.5 to 3 years ago. I mean, that would just be crazy, right? So that's really all I've got to talk about today. The only one last thing I need to add is I am currently working on a schedule that I'm hoping to have up and running on the channel in the next couple of weeks. Once I have it complete, it'll be up in a JPEG form. I'll post it up on Facebook and Twitter, so for anybody who want to know exactly what's going on with the channel, jump on either one of those. I post on there relatively regularly. I try not to spam the feeds too much. So that's really it for this vlog. I'm going to let this final battle play out. This is the XP38G, and this was actually a 3-on-1 engagement. I have a sneaking suspicion that all 3 fighters involved knew exactly who I was. The F6F in particular seemed to have a particularly large grudge against me, and I did almost sorta break my own rules at the end of this battle. But I did also almost kill myself as a result of breaking those rules. So, well, it should be good for a laugh, so I hope you guys enjoy it. Anyways, ladies and gents, click like if you do, subscribe if you want to see more. Fly smart, fly safe, and I'll catch you in the skies.